Welcome to the Performance Formula with JODY Martins. John, officially welcome to the Performance Formula podcast. It's really awesome having you here.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, for people who can't, who's not watching this on YouTube, who's maybe just listening in, I love your smile, like massive smile straight out the gate.
Yeah. I brush every morning.
You brush every morning. I suppose that like I've just met you, but I already get a sense of there's a certain type of energy about you.
Yeah, energy is important. Energy is
Mm-hmm.
important. I totally believe in the better vibration you have, the better things you attract into your life to ultimately help you love your life. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
which is the
brilliant.
purpose of life.
Yeah, yeah. John, if I'm going to spend the next hour or so with you, but I-
Hmm.
I'd like to think that my first question can just open up the conversation a little bit, yeah, right? With everything that you've experienced in your life, with
Uh-huh.
everything that you've gone through, your highs, your lows, etc. What is it you think that we can learn from you?
Great question. I would say the a good thing to learn from me is the power of resilience, the power of using a mind map to get clear on who you are and what you want in your life. Using a mind map to as a guide for your life. As life goes ups and downs, I've learned that having a visual tool that you can constantly reference, kind of like a GPS or your, Waze or something, Google Maps or something, how important it is to have something like that for your personal life and where you're heading in your life.
Mm.
Um, is a good thing. I hope that people will learn from me in our conversation today.
Mm. Mm. What is it that's happened in your life that's led you to this? What I mean by that is
Wow.
you specifically reference resilience,
Yeah,
and then this idea of having a mind map. I'm sure it's significant in your life in some way.
absolutely. It totally is. Well, just to tell you a little bit about that story on how it came into my life, after playing college football and professional football, I retired because I had two screws in my knee, which kind of was one of those identity crises of losing, the game I love and played since a kid, and having to rebuild myself was my first real experience of resilience, that I had to kind of reinvent and recreate myself. And fortunately, I was able to do that in Southern California, Los Angeles. I built one of the largest mortgage companies in the early 2000s and was living this millionaire like lifestyle, making more money than I ever did as a professional athlete, really living this amazing life all the way up until the mortgage meltdown in the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, which essentially made me homeless. I mean, I lost everything,
Sure.
business, cars, houses. I even lost my family. I mean, it was really a low part of my life. And I was basically forced to go live at my mom's house because I didn't have anywhere else to go stay. So when I moved back into my mom's house, I took with me my a gym bag full of gym clothes, my mountain bike, and this big box that I put together that was full of like motivational tapes, CDs, and books because I knew I had to go back in and reread a lot of those books to try to rebuild my life after, being at this lowest part of my life. And inside of that box was this book called the Mind Map book by Tony Buzan. And I don't remember buying it, but or anything. Somebody must have given it to me. But at this point, it resonated. So I read it and it transformed my life because I essentially went on and mind map all of the contents of that book, of that box. And mind mapping gave me some clarity and understanding deeper understanding of when I went to reread and mind map all of those books. By the way, for you and your audience, I did a TEDx talk specifically on this story. So those who want to learn more about that story and how mind mapping totally transformed my life, I encourage you guys to watch my TEDx talk, John Diggs. You can just type John Diggs TEDx in YouTube and it'll come up. But essentially, mind mapping just changed my life because it gave me a way to clarify things I didn't know how to clarify. For one, is who I am. Who am I? What do I want in my life? What I want my life to be about. Now that I was starting from scratch, I really had this blank canvas, and mind mapping allowed me to really get clear on not what was, but what I wanted and what I intended to do with my life. And since then, 2009, 2010, mind mapping, using mind maps has caused me to now become one of the largest or one of the top mortgage software developers in the country. I build the infrastructure for mortgage banks. And in 2020, when COVID hit, I got called to start writing books and sharing my mind mapping message with the world, really. And since COVID, I've written 10 books. I've become an international bestseller author and built an online mind mapping community and got keynotes and workshops. And now I'm just very passionate and really, truly, and believe that my life's purpose is to share the power of this tool, with everyone, and with hopes and understanding that it can truly help people love and live their best lives is my mission and my passion, and why I'm here on the show, and why I thank you for allowing me to share this message. It's really what I'm here to do.
Brilliant. There's a couple of things you mentioned there that I maybe just want to pull a little bit on, if I may
Yeah,
be
for
so
sure.
bold, right? So
Sure.
interesting that you say you were a pro footballer,
Yep.
but your real sense of resilience was only after you played.
Yep.
So
Say
that's
it
a
one more time.
so you said that sort of the first sort of time when you were really had to be resilient was
Right.
after you played,
Yeah. Yeah.
when the
Because
recession hit.
Yeah. Well, it started with football because my whole identity in life, my whole life up in from 7 years old to 25 years old, all revolved around football. When
Mm,
that left, I had to, I went through that dark period of that divorcing of the game that a lot of professional athletes go through when the game is gone. So that was my really first one. But the major one was, when I lost my business, lost my
mm,
family, and lost my life, because that was something that I did not see. I knew eventually I was going to retire from football.
mm,
I knew that was going to end at some point. But my mortgage career, my business, and the life I built, I was planning on doing that the rest of my life.
mm,
So when that took me, and the viciousness that happened, I just got hurt in football. But the mortgage industry, man, I mean, when that collapsed, I mean, I went from several hundred thousand in the green to several hundred thousand in the red in less than 7, 8 months.
mm,
So it was like a dramatic just confusion kind of drop that
mm.
that
The,
required ultimate resilience.
Yeah, the reason it sort of stood out for me when you were explaining that is that often when we speak with athletes, we
Hmm.
say, oh, they got to be resilient. You got to bounce back from your failures.
Yeah.
Yet what you're sort of suggesting through your story is that those things weren't as significant. And I'm wondering if it was because those things were more about what you were doing, being resilient with the doing part of you, like the doing of the football, where
Right.
it sounds like the thing that really challenged the resilience in you was the shift of identity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm,
And that's the big thing, is that, as an athlete, you start to identify yourself with the game. Everything is about being a football player.
mm,
Your lifestyle, your rewards, your acknowledgement, your love, your the relationship that you have with the game, and all of the things that come with the game, your team, coaches, wins, loss, injuries, from broke fingers to everything you get from playing, when that leaves, you have to really try to reset yourself, and to figure out, all right, what next? And it's really an unknown and untold story that I hope ESPN does a 30 for 30 or something on how many professional athletes really go through a dark period when the game is gone,
Mm.
even though they know it's not going to last forever. But just that identity part of it, when you used to putting on your helmet and jersey and having people scream and yell and high five you, when that's gone, it's really a tough blow, but
Mm.
luckily, I had real estate. I knew I was going to do real estate. I was actually doing real estate while I was still playing professional football. So I kind of knew what I was going to be doing afterwards. So even though it hurt me, it wasn't
Mm.
as dramatic as I've seen it happen with some of my friends, how painful it was to have to reset themselves. But I'm glad it happened because it gave me a sense on what the process is needed to reinvent yourself. So 10, 15 years later, when I lost my mortgage company, it was kind of like that same kind of feeling.
Mm.
The game was took from me, and now my mortgage company was took from me to no fault of my own. And now
Mm.
I have to reset myself and try to figure out what play to call next.
Mm.
What do I do next?
Yeah.
Now that it is, so I'm kind of glad that happened because it did kind of help me navigate that really really dark period of losing my mortgage company. It gave me at least the belief that I could transform, this dark period. That this
Mm.
dark period wasn't going to be forever. Put it that way.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. You,
Yeah.
when I think of the idea of sort of then mind mapping,
Hmm.
and my immediate, and I don't know, right? So you must guide me here.
Yeah.
My immediate sort of sense is like I remember at school, I would draw a little circle in the middle of the page and
Yep.
say, the subject is history. And
Yep.
then I would start branching out with a little line and say, okay, World War II, or
Yep.
I don't know, I can't
Yep.
remember all the details.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then under World War II, you start branching out and you start branching out, right?
Yep.
That's sort of the immediate idea that comes to my mind, right? If I think of the concept of mind mapping, how is this idea that you're sort of proposing in the conversation? How is it similar or not similar, and like what is it actually all about? I think you've sort of touched on little pieces of it,
Yeah.
so I'm happy that you get a little
Yeah.
bit deeper with that.
Yeah. Great question. Great question. But yeah, you're right. As far as the basics of mind mappings, always start with a little circle in the middle.
Mm.
And based on the subjects or whatever it is, the subtopics, you can draw circles around that central topic and have it all connect. That's
Mm.
just the general subject. But when it comes to actual practical use, what I started doing when I first got introduced to mind mapping, what I did was start mind mapping the contents of all those that box, all those books: Think and Grow Rich, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Unlimited Power, Power of Now. I mean, every big self-help book that you can ever think of was in that box. But what mind mapping allowed me to do is that it triggers basically 4 things. What mind mapping does, it triggers visual thinking, because now you can actually see your thoughts. So as I was mind mapping the contents of those books, I was actually seeing, instead of doing my notes like most people do in books, they write in the margins or highlight certain things, which is kind of like passive learning to a certain extent. This visual way of being able to see things was very powerful. Then, but what it also triggers was something called active learning. So instead of, like most people read books is passive, they're just sitting back reading it. But when you're mind mapping your books, you're actively looking for keywords and short phrases of each paragraph or chapter to take out of the book to place on a mind map. So you're more engaged with the material. So it's calling more like active learning. And when you start doing this way, you start to understand more of what you're reading, because you're not just like, all right, I'm going to underline that probably to forget it the next chapter or the next page, whatever you underline that resonate, the next page you didn't forgot about already. To where if you're looking at that and mind mapping, and out of this whole chapter, or this whole paragraph, what are like the key words out of this whole thing? Then you take those words, put it on your mind map. So now what you're doing is also stimulating what is called meaningful learning. Because now I actively learn to take it out, and now I put it on my mind map. Now when I'm putting it on my mind map, I'm looking at that key word that I took and start to think about how does that actually relate to my life. I took that word for a reason. I took that statement or that phrase for a reason. How does this actively connect to my life? Which is meaningful learning, because now you're applying new knowledge to the knowledge that you currently own, right? So then the fourth thing it does is what is called is whole brain thinking. So it stimulates your whole brain. Some people say that, you're a right brain thinker, if you're really intuitive or creative, or a lot of musicians are more right brain kind of people. Left brain people are more analytical, process system oriented, more like accountants, if you will. But mind mapping forces the brain to do both of those things at the same time. So that's why it says stimulates whole brain thinking. So you're using more of your brain when you're mind mapping stuff, because you're using your left brain to think about what keywords that you're going to take out. Then you're using your right brain to figure out where to put it at on the map, if you want to use a color or an image or something so it can resonate and stand out. And to your point, in school, what they're finding now is that a lot of Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, and those schools are now teaching and promoting the power of using mind maps for note taking and things of that nature, because they're finding out that it's easier for students to close their eyes and visualize that information on the map versus visualizing the bullet point they may have put it on in their unlegible notes. So they're finding that, and this is what I started finding, is that when I started mind mapping all of those books, I had these big poster boards all over my mom's house of each one of those books. There was like 30 or 40 poster boards over my mom's house when I was first understanding mind mapping. I started to see things that I never saw before about what Tony Robbins was talking about. Wayne
Mm.
Dyer was saying this, and I started seeing the connections of what all of they were saying. And it was a dynamic experience for me, because I took away two main things from after 3 months. Jody, for 3 months straight, bro, literally all day, every day, I was just mind mapping. I would grab a book, go through the book, and just create a mind map, toss that book, grab another book, mind map. I did that all day, every day. I didn't have anything else to do. I was broke. I was homeless, didn't have my kids, but I just was fascinated with this mind mapping stuff. But I walked away with two main things, is that all of the thought leaders that we've ever thought about and can think of and ever heard of, they were all talking about really one thing. The purpose of life is just simply to love life. That's it. They all had their different philosophies, systems, thought processing, perspectives on how to actually do it. But that was the ultimate mission that everybody's been trying to tell us. Here's a way that you can live your best life while you have your life. So that really reset me when I was at my darkest period, to realize that, wait a minute, my life is really meant to be loved. Wait a minute, this is really the point of life. Then the second thing I got is that, I'm in full control on how I love it. That's one thing that we have as humans, is the ability to choose and decide how we want to experience our lives. What loving life means to us.
Mm.
So once I got that, I spent the next 3 months getting clear on who I am. What do I want? What is most important to me in my life? And that process was so empowering to me. I went from broke to making a pretty solid six-figure income in less than 8 months. And I know it was strictly because of what mind mapping did. I got so clear on what my life was going to be about, that when I went into that interview, you talking about energy, my energy was like, I was so congruent, confident, and things of that nature, that there was no way I wasn't walking out with that job, just because I was so clear on who I am and what I wanted, which is what my motivation has been ever since. Because I know there's been a lot of people, and there are a lot of people like I was, trying to figure out the purpose of life, trying to figure out how to love life, trying to figure out who I am in this life, what I want in this life. And I have yet to find a better tool or a better process than a mind map to get people, like you said, to actually draw circles about who are you? What do you want? And when people do it, when I'm working with my clients and my students, it's powerful, for people to see their life as it relates to their health, their wealth, their success and happiness. They can see it versus think, most people identify themselves as a doctor, or I'm a so and so's father, or her husband, or whatever that is. No, but who are you at your core? And I've developed some things to help people really get clear on creating those mind maps so they can see that and get really empowered and use it as a tool to make sure they're always in alignment with trying to love and live their best life, essentially.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. I'm sitting and I'm thinking, hang on. So I'm like, as you're talking, maybe
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit, and I'm listening as best as I can, and my brain in the background is like
Just
saying,
running.
hang on. It's running a little bit, which isn't always the greatest thing, but it's running in line with your conversation, right? So I'm going, okay, hang on, Jody. You actually do this. I got my, like, I don't know if I do it exactly like you do it, but I think whenever I've had to think of, say, something I want to do with my work, right? I
Mm-hmm.
take my book out, my notebook, I'll write in the middle between the two pages, right? Right
Yep.
in the middle, somewhere there, across the middle section, and then I'll draw a little circle and I'll start mapping things out, right?
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
Um, what I realized as you were talking was what happened in my brain was I got this image, like when the brain, whenever we see like a zoomed in image of the brain and how the brain has neurons and synapses and these things that are
Yep.
firing off,
Right.
I went like, hang on, that's like a mind map in my
It is.
head.
It is.
That is exactly how a mind. So what I did, what happened in my brain as you were talking was, like I said, I get why it's so powerful,
Yeah. That's the truth.
because
And
it's
that's
potentially how the brain actually functions. It functions in this idea that here's a package of information, it
mm-hmm.
connects to another package, it connects to a package, and then that's exactly what you explained. You explained, oh, I started putting these things together, and I think that's how our brain works. And so
it,
that then
it
makes to me
does.
complete sense as to why it's potentially as powerful as you
And,
say.
and it's not potentially, it is. That,
Mm,
I mean, it's been backed by science to the point that our brain works in connections.
mm,
Our brain works in certain ways that mind maps that stimulate, mind maps connect to. And that's what more and more people are starting to find, is that, instead of just writing a bunch of stuff in linear lines like we do, like you said, the creator of mind mapping, the father of mind mapping, they say Tony Buzan, this English educator,
mm,
he was back in the 70s trying to figure out ways to help his students learn more. And he started studying the notes of Edison, Einstein, all of these famous people's notes. And he found out that they didn't do linear notes. They did nothing but symbols, images, keywords, kind of like what I just saw on your notepad.
mm,
All these diagrams, these figures. When he looked at all of their notes, that's what they did. So that's where it stimulated his idea to create what is now known as mind mapping,
mm,
because of all of that stuff, on how it relates to the mind, and it helps people absorb information. They say a mind map is the fastest way to get information into and out of your mind, just because the dynamics of, if you want to
mm,
learn something, mind map it. If you want to remember something, mind map it, and it's going to increase your chances of learning and remembering those things, which is
mm,
super duper powerful. It's just shocking to me that not too many people, really use it.
mm,
People heard about it, but as far as using it on a daily, um, it's still relatively unknown, which is, has been my mission and my passion, is to let people know that this is a possible tool, especially in this visual world that we live in now, especially with these kids all being visually stimulated. they need to know that this is possible for them, which could help them be better students, which can help them make better decisions, which can help them solve problems better, which is why I believe that this is why I'm on the earth,
Mm,
is to share this message,
mm,
and just to help those who, because yeah, a lot of people are stressing right now. A lot of people are going through a lot of angst. And what I believe and what I've been finding in my practice, my coaching practices, is that, a lot of people are under stress because they got a bunch of thoughts out here that are swirling in their head, that are disorganized, and, just a bunch of chaos in their mind. Then when I work with these people and actually take them through a process and put all of that thought in a mind map, and now that's kind of organized and got some structure to it, you can see their whole energy just now. Now it's not this mass confusion that's just doing all of this, which gets people all, So yeah, that's a big
mm.
deal, man.
Yeah.
Glad you see it that way.
Yeah. Well, I've only made that connection now
Yeah,
because of this conversation.
good.
So, this idea of who am I,
Mm-hmm.
all right, or that question, who am I? My sense is like that's one of the most difficult questions to answer in this world.
It is.
What we tend to do is, I think, what you explained, right, is that we tend to attach it to the things we do. Like, I'm a footballer. And then when we
Yep.
lose that, we have an identity crisis. Or the sport that I come from, cricket, I don't know if you know much about it.
Yeah.
I say I come from the sport. It's not really, but it's the sport that I'm involved with most of the time. Um, Often players would associate themselves with a number. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
am a
Mm-hmm.
number one batter, or I am a number one bowler, right? And
Yep.
so when they don't perform in that number or that position,
Mm-hmm.
they have what I refer to as an identity crisis, right?
Yep.
Because then all of a sudden they go, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to play. I don't know. It was like you're still playing against the ball that's coming your way. It's like
Yeah.
the basics of the game is not all of a sudden different, but just because they've identified so much with a position,
Yep.
when the position is no longer there, it throws
Yeah.
them for a wobble.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And
And so
I find that most. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you can go.
No, I'm just saying. I find that majority of people never just consciously decided who they are.
Mm,
Most people just evolve in the kind of roles. They evolve into certain things. But it's saying, wait a minute, this is who I am. This is what I want my life to be. This is my intention for myself. These are my core values. These are my beliefs. These are how I'm going to live my life by. Very few people have ever just consciously just did that.
mm,
But it's hard. But then when you step back and think about it, how can you truly love and live your best life if you don't do that? You know what I mean? Because life is going to do all of this. You're going to lose. You're going to get hurt out of your sport. You can get divorced. Somebody's going to die. You're going to lose a job. I mean, life is going to throw you all of this stuff. And if you don't have, some kind of central tool to get you back to who you really are and what you want your life to be, I think it can cause a lot more chaos and pain and suffering than necessary,
mm,
and which is what my mission has been, is trying to get people, I work with a lot of people that are, empty nesters now. Now their kids are gone, and now they're like, my life was my kids. You know,
mm,
now what do I do? Or
mm,
my life was my husband and he just died, or we just got divorced, or I'm at this job that for 20 years and I it drives me nuts. It's not giving me fulfillment. I don't know what I want to do. And that's where those are the people that I'm looking to help and guide, to help and be like, well, wait a minute, all right, let's get clear. You know, what does it mean, to have excellent health for you, spiritually, mentally, physically? When you say a wealth, when you want a wealth of things, what outside of money, what positive emotions you want to experience, when
mm,
success, what does success look like to you? What does happiness look like? A lot of people really haven't just sat down and asked themselves these really thought provoking questions. Then when they do, answer them, and they can see it on a map. You know, they can see it on a map form. It's empowering, Jody. I mean, it's just
Mm.
like I've seen people literally just shift their whole energy, shift their whole way of being, just because now they can see things in ways that they've never saw before about who they are and what's most important to them.
Mm.
That's the I am system that I read
Mm.
and I wrote a book about. I got courses and I keynotes. I help. This is my flagship program,
Mm.
is to really help people get clear on who they are. Because I find so many people that work so hard for goals, get to the goal and realize that I'm not fulfilled because it probably wasn't in alignment with who you really are. So
Mm.
you should probably get clear on who you really are first before you start setting goals, because that goal could be something that's totally different than who you want to be with your life. So I work on that world and I love it.
That's such a cool, I don't know, cool is maybe not the right word. That is such a different take on it, right? Because
Hmm.
if I think of every program that I've been involved with, guilty of it myself, whenever I think of setting goals, it's let's set goals.
Right.
What do you want to achieve this year?
Hmm.
Where if you don't know who you are, how are you setting goals? Like how are you deciding in which way to move, right? Because you could say, oh, I want to be a professional something, right? Whether it's a career or an athlete or whatever, like I want to be the best at this. Okay, but maybe you're not the type of person that's actually going to have the values and the principles and the things in place to pursue that thing, because that thing might require you to give up family, as an example,
Yeah.
or make that a sacrifice in that area, right? If you're a big family person, and or maybe it's a religion thing,
Yeah.
maybe it's a principle that lies outside of those, but you say, well, family is super important to me, but as an athlete I might be trying. I mean, baseball players in the US, they play like 160 games in
Yeah.
180 days, and most probably half of that's on the road.
Yeah. Right.
And an international cricketer can be home 2 or 3 months of the year, and I'm
Hmm.
not saying that it's right or wrong or good or bad. Maybe you can be a family person and achieve that, right? There's ways and means around everything. However, I think it is important to consider your values, the things that you stand for, the way that you want to live your life, the type of person you are,
Hmm.
without any of those things, and then to choose the direction in which you want to go. I can see that there's a lot of value, because then there's alignment, as you say, where if those
Right.
things are not there, then there's not alignment.
Right. And probably even more importantly, just add on what you're saying, which is spot on, is that when you go to pursue a goal and it gets challenging, if you know that that goal is in alignment with who you are, you'll work through that. But if
Mm.
you go through one of those challenges with your goals and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if this is what I really want. This is too hard for me to get up at 5 a.m. every morning to do this job, or to work out or
Mm.
whatever it is. No, I'm not going to do that, because it's no, it's not in alignment with what I want. But when you get clear on who you are, yeah, this is who I am. I want to be this fit. I want to have this kind of, conditioning. I want to have this kind of way of being about myself. And this feels good. This feels right. When you go to start working out at 5 a.m. in the morning and you don't feel like it, that clarity on who you are should give you enough energy to keep pursuing it versus, I'm not doing
Mm.
it. I'm
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's what I've been seeing as well, is that that clarity will help you through tough times, through rough
Mm.
times, which it did for me.
Mm.
And multiple times since I transformed my life with it 10, 15 years ago now, I've had all of this ups and downs, reconciled my wife, we divorced again, kind of deal, and
Mm.
all of the drama you can think of. I got some stories that are like Hollywood like scripts that are happening in my life that I thank God almost every day that I had my I am mind map, because despite all of that, I was able to go back to my I am mind map and like, all right, This is who I am. This is what I want to be. If I'm truly being this I am mind map, how do I respond to these situations? How would this person that's truly committed to health, wealth, success, and happiness deal with this before me now? And I've always used it as that guidance. Well, this person would take the high road. This person wouldn't respond in anger, fist balled up. This person wouldn't do some kind of retaliation, or fall into some stupor because of some other person's behavior. Or no, the person that I see on my I am mind map is going to take that, dust it off his shoulders, and he's keep moving because he knows where he's heading.
Mm.
So that helped me navigate a bunch of storms, which is why, again, I'm passionate about helping others, because I know a lot of people are going through some stuff,
Mm.
and can use some tool like this to help.
Yeah, I have an idea that when it comes from like a stupid, maybe it's not stupid, right? Because there's
It's
actual
not
depth to it. Instagram reel. I cannot remember who the person is. I can't remember the account,
great.
but I remember the guy sort of talking about belief and knowing,
Mm-hmm.
and how if you believe something, there will always be doubt.
Yep.
Belief and doubt go hand in hand, right? So it's, and I think in the Instagram video he makes it about sort of skin color, and there's a sort of racial lines, like
Mm-hmm.
he asks the person that interviews him, do you believe you're white or you're black? He said, no,
Right.
I don't believe I'm white or black. I know I'm white. And he's like,
Right.
so why do you know that? And he's like, well, because my mom's white and my dad's white. He says, exactly, right? So there's no belief.
Right.
He said, but if you believe something, then there's doubt to it.
Yeah.
Then
Yep.
automatically it presupposes, well, I have to believe in this thing because there's a little bit of doubt, but I'll try and convince myself that,
Got to have faith.
and yeah, you got to have faith,
Yeah.
where I think if you have a knowing, then
Yeah.
it eradicates doubt, right? It
It
eliminates
does.
that. And so what I'm sort of hearing here between the lines is that if somebody can engage with a process like this, that
Mm-hmm.
they can get that knowing for themselves,
Yep.
that certainty, which gives them a firm foundation to stand on, to say, right,
Yep.
I don't believe I can be resilient. I
Right.
know I can. I don't
Yeah.
believe I can overcome. I know I can. Or I don't believe I can take on that job. I know that I can take on that
I know
job
I can
because
do it.
because I'm the kind of person that does that. You're right. And so
Yep. That's who I am.
that's
You
who
know.
I am then. Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling my daughters, my daughter's a track runner, and this is like her 5th year running. And I told her, I said, look, you're no longer someone who runs track. You are a track runner.
Mm.
There's a big difference between somebody who does something, like somebody who gambles versus a gambler.
Mm.
There's two different things, because the identity part of that, Tony Robbins says all the time, you only do who you believe you are. If you believe you're a liar, you will lie.
Mm.
If you don't believe you're a liar, chance of you lying is not going to lie. You only
Mm.
do what you identify yourself with. So if you want to be a millionaire, you have to first be a millionaire inside of yourself and really
Mm.
believe it, and know it, that this is who I am. This is what my life is about. A lot of people don't have that certainty,
Mm.
that knowing of who they are and what they want. They're just kind of dancing through life and hopefully make it to the shore safely. But that knowing is powerful. And that's my mission, to transform people with my I am program. I also have a program that's strictly for student athletes that,
Mm.
not only helps them get clear on who they are, but shows them how to mind map their perfect plays, their perfect games, their perfect seasons. So once they have that mind map of those things, now they can go inside in their meditation and visualization practice and start visualizing what they put on their mind map as far as what they believe is a perfect play, perfect game, perfect season. That's been growing pretty well for me as well. That's my big play power program.
Mm.
There's one thing I need to say though, Jody, I was just thinking, is that, mind mapping is one thing. Most people that's ever heard of mind mapping, they pretty much use it for 3 ways, and that's note taking, brainstorming, and project management. Pretty much all Fortune 500 companies use mind mapping for brainstorming, project management and note taking. What I found over the last 6 years of being in this mind mapping world throughout the world is that I'm the only one that's really promoting using a tool as a personal development tool, as something people can use for peak performance, optimal
Mm,
living. So I wanted to distinguish my style
mm,
of approach to mind mapping, which is why I call my style Mappineering, engineering beautiful mind maps to love life more.
mm,
It's kind of like my tagline. So people will know that mind mapping, that's kind of like the older way of brainstorming, note taking, project management. Mappineering is using it as a personal development, daily self awareness. I teach people how to use it for problem solving, decision making, goal setting, self actualization, on how to use it and more as a personal tool like that. And
mm,
so there's a distinction between mind mapping and mappineering. I just wanted to make sure you was aware of. So if
mm,
people go to find me or look for me, they'll see mappineering, and that's just kind of identifying my unique style of using mind maps.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah. So, oh, sorry. So, what have you found? I mean, and I think we've spoken about some of those things, certainly, yeah, right? But what have you found that in life and maybe towards performance, right? Because it's one thing to have the mind map on a piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
or in a book, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be kind of pretty and all these things. And when you look at it, it can be great to visualize.
Mm-hmm.
What have you found as the link between knowing and doing?
Yeah, good question. And what I did to kind of answer that question is that I have my I am system, and there's 3 levels to it. The
Mm,
first level I introduce people to is just to get clear on putting their thoughts and answering questions around what is uh, their I am as it relates to their health, their wealth, success, and happiness. And I just have them put all of that stuff on a piece on a map. Then the second level, what we do is go through and prioritize everything they put on that map. What's really and most important from 1 to 10, everything that you put as most important to you as far as health. Let's set a hierarchy on 1 to 10. What's most important as it relates to health, wealth, success, and happiness? We go through that. Then we develop some action items around there that we also put on that mind map. That's on our level 2. Now that you identify that these top 3 are the 10 most important as it relates to successful relationships, now let's discuss some action items you can take or could take to make sure that you are being successful when it comes to those relationships, what you put on your mind map. The third level is when it really starts to become embodiment. I call that level embodiment because what I do is take everything they put on their mind map, prioritize activities, and what we will do is create a script around that. I am healthy, I am wealthy, I'm successful, I'm happy. It's almost like a mantra, if you will. And I have my students record it over a binaural beat to help kind of stimulate their mind. And they commit to listening to it every morning and every night themselves, telling themselves about everything that they just put on their I am mind map. So I am healthy spiritually, physically, mentally. I'm healthy. I'm wealthy. I'm successful. I'm happy. Then in that process, as they're recording it, I coach them around feeling the emotions that they want to have once they fully embody that health of their vision, that wealth of their vision and success, their happiness that they visualize. What emotions do you feel when you're in that state? That's what I need you to start feeling all the time when you're doing your meditation and visualization practice of your I am mind map. While you're laying in your bed, you need to feel extreme happiness, that excellent health, and just keep practicing that. And I believe that takes it to that knowing level to now because you unconsciously now are reprogramming your conditioning about who you are and how you identify yourself. You're kind of telling your unconscious self. You're kind of telling the universe, you're telling God, this is who I am, and this is what I want to feel, this is what I want to experience. As you do each one of these meditation practices of your I am practices, and pretty soon, your behavior falls in alignment with that. Most people know that most of our behavior is on an unconscious level. We can choose to do certain things, but most of our operating system is on an unconscious level, which is why I've learned and trained people how to go into an unconscious level to do the reprogramming through the visualization and the incantations of their I am mind map, because that will actually take it to a doing phase, a knowing phase, where it's easier to deal with the peer pressure when I'm working with students, which is a big thing that I'm doing now. I speak to a lot of incoming freshmen in colleges and show them the importance of getting clear on who they are and what they want out of this college experience by creating their own I am mind map. So now they can withstand and have the personal power to not deal with peer pressure or do with all of that stuff that all of us did as freshmen, kind of stuff that we regret, drinking too much and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that, I hope that answers your question. That kind of takes it to a doing level, is the whole idea, not just to create a mind map. The mind map is just to crystallize what you want. Then once you crystallize it, now you got to visualize it, what you crystallize over and over again, over and over again. And pretty soon your alignment, your behavior, you start to vibrate in that energy. Then you start attracting things because of that energy. And pretty soon you are experiencing that what you wanted by that process, is my whole kind of I am system. In a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah. How does somebody make sure that, because I'm sitting and I'm thinking, so earlier in our conversation, we spoke about this, being aligned and that there's alignment.
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody make sure, if they're listening to this, that what they set out on the paper is an alignment of who they are versus I'm creating a mind map of just this idyllic idea of who I am, maybe what I
Right.
want in life, but there's not that alignment component there. It's easy to,
Yeah.
like, I think, I mean, and you rightly said it. Some people pursue goals and they get to the end of it, and then they feel like it's
Yeah.
empty to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
No fulfillment. Yeah.
So how can we make sure from the start that we're setting off on the right course versus
Yeah.
not? Is there some things to look out for or be aware of?
Yeah. Well, what I would like to say first off is that your I am mind map is not static. It's a dynamic piece. As we evolve, your I am mind map should evolve. Not the core principles of health, wealth, success, and happiness, but maybe the approaches or what you make those things mean may evolve over time. Because as you sit there and your first version of your map and you go to sit with it and try to visualize it, oftentimes, I've sat there and been like, you know what? That key word doesn't really resonate with me. I don't know if there's got to be a better word that I can use to explain what I'm trying to feel in this circumstance. So let me sit with it for a little bit and figure out, is this truly the right feelings that I want to have? Or is this truly the right emotion that I want to have on my I am mind map? And as you start to develop this relationship with your I am mind map, which is what happens, things change. Things don't resonate like it maybe once was. As you start to just really start to mentally grapple with it, it's almost, and not to sound religious or kooky or not, but it's almost like when you start to create your I am mind map and start to meditate on it and think about it, it's almost like your way of communicating with your higher power, your God. And it's almost like God is telling you, giving you approval and giving that feeling in your heart that that's right.
Mm.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I want you to experience on your I am mind map. That's the feeling that will help you be the highest and best version of yourself.
Mm.
That word that you choose at first was good, but this word is better. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Because when you hear this word, triggers an emotion in you right away. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So let's get those words all on your map. So when you're looking at it, you feel that everything on there deeply resonates with you to the point where, you know, it's like a really an anchoring, triggering response that puts you in the right state or a better state, which is a point of the whole exercise is what we do.
Mm.
I hope that makes sense.
It makes 100% sense. I think there's a couple of things I take from that. The first is that, one, it takes work. It's not a quick little 30-minute exercise that you're doing. It is, I think that's something I've been aware of throughout this conversation. And many of the conversations on the podcast
Mm-hmm.
inevitably leads to that sort of thinking that, if there's anything we want to be successful at, if there's a performance you want to put in out there in the world, it's going
Consistent.
to take work, and it's going to take work beyond just the, like, baseball hitting balls or throwing balls, cricket hitting balls, bowling balls, football kicking them, passing them, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes work beyond that, beyond the gym even.
The
There's
personal
other
work.
work. Yeah, there's other work that needs to happen.
The personal work. The
Yeah,
personal work. You know, and when you
yeah.
do this personal work like this and get this relationship with yourself, because really you're getting a relationship with yourself and your higher power, is what I
Mm,
say. Your God, yourself, and I am mind map is really just for you to get clear with your higher power on what your purpose is in your life. You know,
mm,
and I truly believe that's the way God communicates to us. You know,
mm,
if he likes what you did, he'll make you feel good. If he
mm.
didn't like what you did, he gonna make you feel like shit. You know what I mean? So, you know, so as long as you keep in your eye and mind map and making sure everything is there, feeling good, and you embodying that, and now you starting to proceed through your days with knowing that this is who I am as my core, you know that you're in alignment with yourself and you're in
Mm,
alignment with your higher power. So if somebody comes and asks you to do something outside of that, you're gonna be so easy for you to be like, nah, that's
mm,
not that doesn't in alignment. And funny, I have a quick story for you. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and you know she did her I am mind map, and I got all my kids, you know, mind mappers and things of that nature. But she was talking about this one boy that was just driving me nuts. You know, every time I go pick her up from school, this one little boy just likes her nonstop. She just keep talking about him, and I'm like, yeah, Dad don't want to hear that kind of deal. But then all of a sudden, she stopped talking about him. And a week or so went by, so I decided to ask her. I was like, hey, you know, whatever happened to Andrew? She's like, oh, Dad, I cut that off a long time ago. I was like, well, what happened? She was like, he didn't fit on my I am mind map. And I was like, I was like, yes. But that's what I find, you know, not just with my daughter, but just in people, they get that personal power to be like, wait, this job is not working for me. You
mm,
know, this is not bringing me my fulfillment that I know I need, that I deserve. So now I have more power to make decisions that I know I need to make. You
mm,
know, whether leaving a relationship, I know I should make it, but I just don't have enough personal power to make it. So a lot
mm,
of people are just festering in bad situations. But then once they get really clear on who they are and what they want, it gets easier. Like, wait a minute, you know, I know there's something better for me than this. You
mm,
know, my I am mind map is telling me that there's something better for me than this. So, you know, I'm not gonna make no stupid decision and leave quick, but I'm sure gonna start looking for a better job or a better relationship that's more in alignment with who I'm intending to be, because I know that's gonna bring me the ultimate fulfillment that I need to truly love my life, kind of deal.
mm.
So that's just one thing I wanted to share on that. It was I got a kick on that.
No, no, awesome, right? So the other thing that always seems to rear its head on the podcast is an idea around self-awareness, right? Because this
Mhm.
takes a high level of, maybe not high, maybe high, I don't know. It takes a level of self-awareness where you have that sense, right? Because that
Mhm.
connectedness with your emotions, with your, as I like referring to it, your inner experience, your inner
Yeah.
world,
Yep.
that
That
if
worked.
you're not connected to that, then that embodiment component, as you speak about it, might not be able to evolve, right? Because you're
Right.
because you're not able to connect with your life essentially. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many of us nowadays that are so externally stimulated. People's value and worth is like on how many likes they get, or how many subscribers they get, or how many, people that give them, approval. That it's all false, because it's not coming from the internal piece. All of that stuff can leave. But if you have an internal compass, an internal commandments, an internal GPS, an internal constitution on who you are and how you live your life, regardless of what happens outside of you, somebody says something bad, or somebody dies, or whatever happens outside of your being, you should be fine with. You should accept it. It's not saying that you're gonna minimize the hurt or the pain that whatever may happen, but it should help you navigate it in more of an empowering way, versus succumbing to external circumstances. It's a cloudy day. Now I feel like killing myself,
Mm.
or whatever it is. So many people go through so much stuff that relying so much on external stuff that, I'm hopeful with my I am program and product and message and things of that nature, that I can get people to find that true happiness, inside of themselves, which is really resonating. It's attractive to people. It's really the place to be. Most people that we really are fond of have some semblance of strong identity. They know who they are. They know why they're doing this. I know I was born to play cricket,
Mm.
and I'm a damn good cricket player. I
Yeah.
mean, people love those people. It's just those people that you're like, that person says stuff, but he does something different. It's hard to connect to people who are out
Mm.
of congruent and out of integrity like that, is what
Yeah.
I've been finding.
Yeah. Awesome. John, I've loved this conversation.
Too.
I feel like we can keep going, but I think you've certainly shined a light on a topic that's often discussed on the podcast, and you've brought an idea about how we can, go about um, engaging with that part, which is this whole idea of our identity, who we are,
Yeah.
and that there is actual tools out there that people can use to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you for that, and yeah, thank you for being here. If anybody's sort of interested in connecting with you, what would be the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, JohnDiggs.com. I'm on all pretty much social medias, platform, everything. TikTok, I'm there. People can email me directly at john@johndiggs.com. Please know that I am so passionate and excited just help as many people as possible. So if any of you guys are listening, have any questions about anything you heard, or want me to clarify anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll be cool with you. I'll be loving with you, and I'll try to do everything I can to share some information with you to ultimately help you love and live your best life. That's what life is about.
Awesome. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you for having me, Jody. Good seeing
Awesome.
you.
Cheers.